Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to give you guys an end of season update for my tomato and potato grafted plants. So I've shown you this plant in a previous update. It's basically a tomato plant that's been grafted on top of a potato plant. So the idea is you have tomatoes on the top half of the plant, potatoes on the bottom. It's now the end of the season. It's late October. The plant's starting to die back, and also we've had some autumn rains. We have very high water table here, so as you can see the pit where it's sitting in is completely waterlogged. The water did actually come up to the top of the soil level in here, so even in this area we had water on the surface of the soil. And this water, with the weather forecast looking how it is, we're probably going to continue with waterlogged soil probably for the next month or so at least. So once this water gets into the soil in this polytunnel, it tends to stay there, and it takes a while until it goes down again, probably springtime. So since the last update it has done really well. It hasn't been pruned at all because I wasn't planning to prune it, and there has been a little bit of tomato blight that's set in. You can see some of this mouldy material starting to grow on some of the stems. We've been removing most of the mouldy blighted material, and it's been growing quite well even with a bit of blight. So the blight hasn't been killing it, but it has been an issue for it, and so some of the fruits are a bit scabby because of that. But generally it's been fruiting quite well, and strangely it's actually been fruiting better than the ones that weren't grafted onto a potato. So there's some over here which is the same variety, and this has actually been fruiting a lot worse than the one that's grafted onto a potato. So we have actually already harvested several tomato fruits. The ones at the moment are just green. What we need to do now is pick the last remaining fruits and ripen them on a windowsill. It's too late in the season for these to ripen naturally now. The weather's got cold and it's also quite cloudy as well, so there's not really getting any heat in the polytunnel. If it was still sunny, it wouldn't be a big issue. The polytunnel would heat up a bit more, but it's just getting too cold now, so we'll need to ripen these up inside the house. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to cut the plant back, harvest any of the tomatoes that are left on it, and then we'll have a look at the root system and we'll see if we got any potatoes or not. I'm not super confident we will have any potatoes. The reason being, this was grafted onto a potato plant which was already quite mature, so it wasn't at the stage of producing new potatoes, at the stage of fattening up the existing potatoes. So if I had grafted it on a younger potato plant, there'd be more chance of having a good crop of potatoes in here. And the other reason is this was growing on its own root system for the second half of the growing season. So I did keep cutting around the base here, making sure any of the new roots coming down from the tomato wasn't rooting into the soil. But from about the middle of the season, maybe just towards the end of the season, I wasn't able to keep cutting those roots away, and it did self-root, and so it's growing on a mixture of its own root system and some of the potato root system. So it won't have been putting all of its energy into the potato root system, so it won't have fattened up as much as it should have. So as I say, the main reason I expect it won't have a very good crop of potatoes is because it was grafted on a more mature plant. But we'll see. I'll dig it up, see how many potatoes we've got. Also, it's also because it's grown so well and it's put so much growth into its top half and into fruiting, I don't think much of its energy has been diverted into tuber production. But I'll set up the time lapse now and I'll get started with cutting this back. So that's the tomato plant cut back. As you can see, there was quite a lot of green tomatoes still on it. These are beef steak tomatoes. They're quite nice flavoured as well. But we'll see if we can get these to ripen. If we can't, what we'll do is we'll probably just make some kind of green tomato chutney out of them. But if we put these on a sunny windowsill with some ripening bananas nearby, there's a good chance that some of these larger ones should turn red and become ripe. So the base of the plant itself, it looks quite healthy, all things considered. There's a lot of roots coming out of it. That's because the graft was probably not perfect, so it was encouraging the plant to put down some new roots to get a better root system. So as for potato tubers, I'm not expecting too much, as I said previously, but also with it now being in saturated soil, any tubers I do find could well be rotten just from the amount of water that's in the soil. Also, we've had bad blight on the potatoes outdoors, so there's a chance some of them could be rotting from blight on this as well. But I'll start digging now, see what I find. I can't dig too deep, unfortunately, because it's completely saturated, this soil. And also, because this is a 100-litre pot and it's fully saturated soil, it's going to be over 100 kilograms in weight. So I can't lift this out of the pot, out of the trench to drain it. So unfortunately, I just have to dig around in the mud. So I didn't expect many potatoes, but to be honest I am quite disappointed at how few there is. There are some, but they are very, very small. You can see here we have some baby potatoes that I could use for a salad or something. You can see the roots, how they're attached there onto the stem. There's another little one here, but generally it's next to no potatoes barely at all. It has been growing on the potato root system mostly, because a lot of these roots that are coming down from the top, they weren't really going into too much. There's a few thicker ones here, but most of them are quite thin. So any other tomato root system was more this bit. This bottom bit here is more the potato root system. You can see that there, looking quite strong. I'll try and rip it apart, see if I can see more of it. But generally, it's not done well at all. You can see there some more of the original stem as well. The graft will be somewhere inside this mass of roots, but it's going to be hard to see because there's so many roots and it's grown so much since I originally planted it. And this whole thing is quite solid, but I'll get some secateurs now and cut into this, see if I can find anything. So I think this is probably round about the original graft, so we have some material coming up here. I think this is roughly the dividing line round about there. The stuff kind of V-shaped up is the potato, and the tomato is this section coming down here. But as I say, there's not a huge amount to show, and there is quite a lot of side roots coming off, which some of them could be from the tomato. So what I'm going to do next time is, when I do this next year, is I'm going to graft a much younger potato plant. That way we should get a much better harvest of potatoes, because this is really quite pathetic. Got almost no potatoes at all. Also, what I'll do is I'll graft it a lot higher up. It's more of a risk of it snapping when it's grafted higher up, but that way any roots coming down from the tomato are much less likely to reach the soil and establish their own root system. And that way all the energy from the tomato goes into the potato root system, and there's much more chance that we'll get potatoes that way. So I'll definitely try this again next year, but this year, yes, it's not really worked too well, but I can always learn from my mistakes. It is very woody, the graft, and it's been callousing over a lot, which you would expect if it's not a perfect graft. And I'll just do a cross-sectional cut as well and see what that looks like. So it's kind of hard to see what's going on with the cross-sectional cut, but I think this middle bit is mostly potato, and the outer bit here is more tomato. But as I say, it's kind of hard to see because it's grown so much and there's such a mass of roots around it. It's hard to see really what's going on with it. But going down right to the bottom section here, you can definitely see more of the original potato stem there, and the kind of callus this has grown all around it from the tomato plant, where it's kind of joined the two together. So that's all for this video update. I'll definitely be trying it again next year and see how I get on. This year I would say it hasn't been a complete failure, so although I've only managed to get 2 or 3 tiny little salad potatoes, and I didn't get the double cropping that I was hoping for, I did actually get some better tomatoes than I did on the other tomato plants, which were growing on their own root system. So I'll definitely try it again this year, and it did grow better on a potato root system. And I think the reason the top half of the tomato grew better on the potato root system than it did on its own root system is because the soil in here is quite cold, and potatoes are quite suited to a cooler climate, so the cold soil wasn't a big issue for it, and that really helped it boost its growth. So I'll definitely try again next year. I'm not sure if I'll get potatoes. Hopefully I'll get more than I did this year because it's a very small amount, but it does at least seem to grow better. And what I'll do next year is I'll probably use the cherry tomato, because they tend to crop better in here anyway. The beefsteaks have struggled to ripen here in Scotland, and I'll probably use a different type of potato as well. This one I think was the main crop. I might try a couple of different varieties. So I might try an early potato variety which should set potatoes much earlier in the season, and I'll also try a main crop potato which should get a much bigger harvest overall. So that's all for this update, and I'll see you guys next spring when I'll be trying it again.